Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this very, very important session, looking at the, at the Sudan crisis and the atrocities that is currently happening in Sudan to women and girls, and the pursuit of justice and accountability. Today, we have a fantastic group of speakers who hold significant expertise, and we are all going to try as much as possible to share with you our work and where are we currently standing in relations to the atrocities and crisis and the violence that is happening to women and girls and civilians in Sudan. My name is Halil Karib. I work as the Regional Director of the Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa. I am originally from Sudan. And before I introduce the speakers, I would like to extend our gratitude to our partners and funders, Global Affairs Canada, the European Union government, and the IMS foundations. And I would like you also, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the EU in this session. Thank you very much, Madam Julia, for being here. And I believe Dr. Joy Izulu, she should be here. I'm not sure if she made it. Yeah, she's coming, okay, from the UN Human Rights Council fact-finding missions, one of the mechanisms that works on investigating the violations against the Sudanese women. Also, I have a note, very quick note. If you don't want to take your picture, for your picture to be taken, kindly notify Ramo, my colleague at the back, and we will definitely make sure that that does not happen. And I would also like to acknowledge the fact that many of my Sudanese colleagues, frontlines defenders and activists, were not able to make it to this platform due to the, the visa barrier and obstructions of their participation, which is, it made it, literally very few of us who can actually have the capacity to interact in this platform, which is quite unfortunate. I believe most of us are aware that genocidal acts and atrocities in Sudan have been recycling for literally more than half a century. The violence in Darfur region started in early 2000s, including, the destructions of cities and villages across one of Sudan's most populous regions. Darfur used to have at least more than 10 million people. And the crisis in Darfur and atrocities are mostly framed around suppressing, the demands of Darfuri indigenous African communities for justice and for access to resources. Sudanese central government at the time has built an alliance with the pastoral community in the region and recruited majority of those communities as forces to suppress African indigenous groups. And these suppressions evolved on an act of complete eliminations of communities, of their existence for many years, or downgrading them to be treated as third-class citizens. Amid these atrocities, sexual violence was consistently used as a central tool, to forcibly evict populations it was and it is still used for land grabbing and for extortions of resources and properties, and also for completely devastating communities across the region. Therefore, infrastructure has completely destroyed, and since then, SIHA has been working for over 20 years. We have witnessed, the waves of sexual violence that women in Darfur region has been encountering. By 2006, 2007, the process to refer the Darfur case to the International Criminal Court has started. And I believe by 2008, there was an indictment of the Sudanese president at the time and many of his accomplices. After that, the Security Council has made the decisions to launch a peacekeeping missions of an African Union, United Nations peacekeeping missions to provide protections for the civilians in the region and to observe acts of violence and Security Council resolutions, including the flow of arms to the region. The mission has continued between 2008 and then it was randomly seized in 2020. And as someone who worked in Darfur for over 20 years, I believe the seizing of that mission has largely contributed to the accelerations of violence across Sudan, across Darfur and across Sudan. The lack of observatory mechanisms on grounds, to oversee the flow of arms, the fact that the violence did not stop, civilians continue to struggle, sexual violence against women and girls continue to exacerbate, and so on. Coming 2003, sexual violence has continued to be used as a central tool with an ethnic dimension in Darfur and, of course, across Sudan. And we have documented through my organizations, cases of involving girls as of 6 years, old women above 70. We have also documented cases of men and boys who has been exposed to conflict-related sexual violence. Communities and women, and men and boys were raped inside their homes. They were raped by the side of the road as they were fleeing the conflict. And there was no limit to the scale of the violation. And still today, as we are speaking, I'm very sure the minute I will open my phone, I will find reports coming. There isn't a single day that has passed without more than 5, 6 reports of conflict-related sexual violence, and those are the ones who were able to report. So it is beyond devastation, and it's not limited to Darfur now. It's across Sudan. Against all these violations, considering, looking at the, of course, the justice system at the local level has been completely disintegrated. The international justice system, the ICC is, still active in Darfur, but we are all aware of the challenges that the International Criminal Court is facing at this point in time. And then the issue of civilian protections remains central and quite significant. the atrocities that are happening against Sudanese women in particularly, and against Sudanese civilians, it's not at the center of the conversations at all level. If we look at the multiple initiatives around Sudan, there is emphasis on recycling the same modalities of peace processes and peace agreement that would again enable the perpetrators to be part of the ruling structures. And at this point in time, as Sudanese women and as women from Darfur, we are struggling seriously to regain and recapture our agency and our voice, and to have the capacity to speak and to amplify, what's happening to us. With this being said, I'm going to invite our first speaker today, Nadia Taha. She is an itinerary. She is a multimedia producer and a reporter and director from Darfur, originally from Al-Fashir. Nadia has over a decade of experience in reporting on conflict and post-conflict situations in Sudan and across the African continent with different media outlets, including the Voice of America. She is also the co-founder of Sudan Action Hub, a collective group of Sudanese who are living in the United States and beyond, and they are focusing on advocacy, on documentations, and extending support to survivors of atrocities in Sudan and Darfur. Nadia.
Thank you so much, Hala. Actually, before I start beginning my reporting and talk about what I was supposed to talk, I would like to thank every single person who attended this event. And also, thank you so much for SIHA to bring me here to speak about Darfur with a lot of people who are not giving us voice, but thank you to SIHA. I'm so appreciate that today I'm here. Darfur conflict started in 2003 between the Darfurian rebel group, it was JEM, and Sudan Liberation Movement. During that time, al-Bashir started recruiting a militia called Janjaweed, and lately they changed the name to Rapid Support Force. Those militia, they used to, not like right now, they have cars, they have Toyotas where they're able to fight. That time, they were all of them in horse. That's the reason why they call Janjaweed. That means a devil on behind of horse. They've been started attacking village after village. In Darfur, we have 3 big cities, Al-Fashir, Niala, Jinena. All those villages within a year being every single village as a city surrounded with at least 3 camps. I'm from Al-Fashir. When I was at the war on the Fashir, I was just getting to high school at that time. We've been seeing a lot of women and kids are coming to the villages around Al-Fashir until they made 3 camps, Abuja camp, Salam camp, Maskar Abu Shok, and also Zamzam camp, which is in the south of Al-Fashir. What I was seeing in my eyes at that time, we used to go and volunteer to help the newly arriving women and kids. At that time, before even NGOs they arrive, Al-Fashir people are really generous people. They started giving them blanket and clothes. People who they came new and they have no place to sleep. I saw moms, they tried to cover their kids underground for the cold, because Fashir is semi-desert, so it's really cold in the winter time. At that time, I went to law school, but this is the thing turning me to like, I was not want to finish the law school. I want to report what I've been seeing in Al-Fashir. After I finished my law school, I started working in a radio called Sudan Radio Service. It was funded by USAID in Nairobi, and I started a program called Women's Issue. This program specifically, I've been interviewing the women who survived the war, women who survived genocide, women who are coming from marginalized African tribe, because most of the Janjaweeds were targeting Zaghawa, For, Masalit, Eranga, Birgit, Bertie, name it. And those women all use them. They like mostly they've been raped, they've been violent in their farm. They will talk openly about what happened to them. And in Women Issues program, we give them their voice, but we cannot name every single name because of the stigma. If in Darfur you started talking about rape, even the society will not allow, like they were gonna target you. So we always give them different names. If I would like to talk about the recent 2003 war, it will take so long, but I would like to also mention 3 activists from Darfur who are being arrested and tortured by NIS at that time. NIS is the Sudanese National Security. There's someone called Al-Dabi. He will send people to see who's reporting for like international human rights organization, who's writing report, and then they will put them in prison, they will torture them. One of them, Fatima, I did her story, I reported about her back then in 2012 and 11. She said she was in a prison and they are not allowed her family to visit her for 3 years. She's been seeing rape, she's been tortured. When she arrived to Nairobi, she has no single hair in her hair, all came down. And I also remember Hawa, and she also got one of the awards in the United States. She was also taken from Al-Fashir to Khartoum, and she'd been tortured in prisons because she was reporting for Darfur. And another lady, her name is Ikhlas, also she's taken from Niala. If you see that there, everyone is from different state of Darfur. I would like to also speak about the recent war in Darfur, especially in 2025. This Al-Fashir has been under siege for almost 2 years. I lost my brother Muhammad, and he left his wife and his son Ammar behind. I lost classmates, I lost neighbors, I lost friends, and mostly people in Al-Fashir, they decided like when the attack coming from the south of Al-Fashir, the north, the attack mostly started from the north by the Reproductive force. So they decided to move everyone to south of Al-Fashir. So I remember my family, they moved to 3 sides of Al-Fashir until they made it to Zamzam. And then Zamzam came in every last year being attacked. It's my first time reporting in Africa. I've never seen attacking. A camp has over 1 million people. And those girls and women are being killed. My cousin Hanadi was killed in that. 7 other doctors from her colleague, they was in helping these people. They've been killed. They belong to relief organization. I think some of you have seen the report. Within Zamzam camp, we lost thousands of people. We lost girls, women are being killed. And then they managed to make it to Tawila. Road to Tawila, if you heard the stories from the road to Tawila, it's heartbreaking. Women and girls, they've been searched in the street. Even one of stories I know, my niece, she was wearing one of a clothes I brought it to her from US. It seemed like it has a brand. They took the clothes from her. 3 days, she's walking naked in the street. By the time she reached Tawila. That's how is the situation in Al-Fashir. This is my personal experience. My cousin Gisma, she buried 6 of her family members before she left Al-Fashir. Her daughter, Nusayba, she's a doctor, and she was helping the people in Al-Fashir hospital. They came, and the day of 26th of October, they came to her house in Al-Gubba Fashir, and her husband, Dr. Al-Hadi, who was paralyzed because he has a stroke, he has to hide her daughter under the bed, but they shoot him and they kill him because they want to rape Dictora. And she managed to escape with her daughter. In the road to northern Sudan, she passed away from heart attack because she left all her family behind. And Dictora Hanadi, she reached to northern Sudan, a camp by herself. Stories from Al-Fashir are all heartbreaking. If I started talking from Al-Fashir, from what happened to the women in the shelters, one of the women who are in the Saudi hospitals, she just had a baby, but they attacked and they killed most of the women. I think a lot of you, they heard about the Saudi hospital. I know Hala, she's talking about the time, but I hope I will get a chance to speak more. what I was recommending is we need protection for people of Darfur, extremely. We need troops in the ground to protect the people of Darfur, because violence in Darfur is more extreme than everywhere. It's taking ethnic side. For them to see, like, African people, they don't have right to live. That's how Janjaweed they see the black people in Africa. So what I want a mechanism to protect civilian in Darfur. And I will speak more if I get chance.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nadia, for sharing. And thank you for your courage and the work you are doing. And I know one of our concerns that the women from Darfur is often, their voices is not being heard. They were not invited to public spaces to speak about their lived experiences and to speak about their position and their view and their demands for justice and accountability. So, so we really appreciate that you are here, and we hope, that we continue to push for stronger participations of women from Sudan and women from Darfur in public platforms. My next speaker is Macarena Says. She is the executive director of the Women Rights Division of Human Rights Watch. Previously, she was a full-time faculty member and the director of the Center for Human Rights and Humanitarian Law at the American University, Washington College of Law in Washington, D.C. She is an internationally recognized expert in gender, sexuality, family law, and human rights. So thank you very much for being with us here. Macarena, I am just very concerned about the microphone because I can't.
I think that works,
oh,
no?
I think those ones are for the.
They don't work.
Yeah, they don't work.
I
Okay. So let's see. Yeah.
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 There it is.
So let me ask you the first question.
Sure.
Okay, so so listening to the extent of sexual and reproductive violence in Sudan and the importance of justice in this context, we need you to help us to draw a link, or if you can break it down, how is this fits as atrocity crimes and as crimes against humanity, particularly as a genocide crime, based on your experience.
Thank you very much, and I'll try to be very brief because I think that I would prefer if we can give you as much time as you to tell your experience. So very briefly, thank you for this opportunity. Atrocity crimes is sort of like an umbrella concept that it's used to talk about the most egregious violations of international law, war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide. And the same act can be valid as a war crime, as a crimes against humanity, and also as a part of genocide. A war crime is an unlawful act within an armed conflict. It can be between parties, or it can be between different states, or an internal armed conflict that is against the laws of war or international humanitarian law. And sexual violence is part of, it's a war crime. Now, if we don't have time here, but I think that it's also important to recognize that international law has not been good to women either. And it has a very shameful story, how sexual violence and rape came to be what it is today. And it was at the beginning, as always, a crime against the honor, which is very embarrassing for international law and everybody who has been in the making of international law. And it's been thanks to women, brave women, and their voices to say this is not about honor. And so a war crime can be just one act within a context of war. So one rape is already enough within the context of war to be a war crime. But when it is part of a systematic or widespread attack, it can be a crimes against humanity, and crimes against humanity don't have to be within an armed conflict. They can also happen in peaceful times. And in that case, it's also important to understand that one act of sexual violence, that it's within a widespread or systematic attack of a civilian population, that in itself could also be part of crimes against humanity. Now, what we have seen, unfortunately, in Darfur is that we don't need to discuss whether one act of sexual violence is enough to be crimes against humanity, because there is so much evidence that sexual violence has been widespread and systematic as well, that it is a crimes against humanity.
Right. Can you help with the mic? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But if you can hear me, I can keep going on so we don't waste time. And so, thank you.
Okay.
And when it becomes a genocide, the genocide is a particular crime that happens when there is an intention to destroy a part or a whole group based on national, racial, ethnic, or religious basis. And in that case, the key component is the genocidal intent. And so that becomes a little bit more complicated in terms of proving intent. Now, I think that there are enough evidence in what is happening decades ago, but also now since 2023 in Darfur to talk about at least genocidal acts. And sexual violence can be a genocidal act because destroying a whole population doesn't mean necessarily only killing the population, but it also means inflicting mental or physical pain or creating the conditions of life that would make it impossible to really continue living. And so sexual violence is a component of that. And it's been very kind of late also that we have talked about sexual violence as acts of genocidal acts, as acts of crimes against humanity. And we have moving away from this idea that rape is an opportunistic act that happened because men can rape. It is a lot more complicated. It's a lot more simpler than that, but it's a lot more systematic, and it's a lot more intentional than an opportunistic idea. And I think that the idea of opportunism has been so bad for international criminal law. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. And I think we might get back to you, with further questions. So our next speaker is Antonia Molevi. She is the founder and executive director of Legal Action Worldwide Law. Law is a partner of SIHA, and we are quite honored to actually publish together this report, which is, I consider it over 500 days of siege. It emphasizes the situation of North Darfur and what happens in Al-Fashir. And it has one of the strongest recommendations as well, and very clear, and significant investments and research went into this report. Antonia, I would like, if you can speak to us, and you have such an enormous experience working in conflict and post-conflict situations in Syria, in Myanmar, in the Ukraine, and leading an organization that emphasizes war crimes and crimes against humanity, and with all your backgrounds, legal backgrounds on human rights. If you can highlight the recommendations and the findings that came on this critical report.
Thank you, Hala. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be here. Thank you to our partners and co-sponsors. Before I answer your question, Hala, I'd like to recognize what Nadia has said today and our thoughts are with your family. I lived in Darfur during the first conflict for 2 years in 2005, so it resonates with me personally what has happened there, and thank you very much for sharing it with us today. As Hala has said, we are launching a report together called Over 500 Days of Siege, the Foreign Arms and the Rapid Support Forces Campaign of Sexual and Genocidal Violence in Al-Fasher, Sudan. And it documents patterns of rape and other forms of sexual and reproductive violence that formed a defining feature of the campaign by the Rapid Support Forces. Many of you may have seen the findings of the UN fact-finding mission on Sudan, which said that they're hallmarks of genocide. Indeed, in our report, we say the same, that individual RSF members have committed genocidal acts. Now, one of the important parts of the report, as we look in detail at the arms transfers, let us be very clear. It is the transfer of arms and weapons, drones, vehicles that has enabled the siege and the violence that took place in Al-Fasher for more than 500 days. And it is this aspect that the report has shined a spotlight onto it. In it, we say that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the Emirati origin or Emirati designed weapons systems, the UAE, including armed and reconnaissance drones, long-range artillery, mortars, anti-armor munitions and armoured vehicles were transferred or were made available for RSF use in Darfur after the outbreak of hostilities in April 2023, knowing that there is a ban on the import of this and sanctions in relation to this. A significant portion of the arms and munitions used by the RSF originated from manufacturers in China, Bulgaria, and states of the former Yugoslavia. We didn't find evidence that these weapons were directly supplied by the states, but instead were supplied in significant part via secondary pathways, primarily through the UAE and associated regional transit hubs. In fact, 16 countries have been identified in relation to the transfer of arms to the rapid support forces that were used in Darfur during this time. The influx of drones. We should really be looking at this aspect. Drones are being used more and more in conflicts today to kill civilians and to enable further violations. Anti-army munitions, artillery, vehicles and small arms sustained the RSF operational capacity across successive phases of the Darfur campaign, including the assault on Jenaina and the massacres of Masalit civilians from April to November 2023 and the encirclement of Al-Fasher. So this is the first time that we have really directly linked the weapons transfer and the conflict-related sexual violence. And we have a number of recommendations to the states that are, welcome Joy, in relation to those who have supplied or facilitated arms to the RSF, in particular to the UAE. Firstly, immediately suspend all transfers of arms, ammunitions and dual-use items and logistical support that risk being used by the RSF or affiliated militias to commit war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide, to conduct transparent, independent investigations into transfers to the RSF during that period and to prevent further transit or facilitation of materials through the territory, and to review and, where necessary, revise arms export control frameworks to ensure compliance with obligations under international law. Now, let's also be very clear that third-party states have obligations in relation to these issues. And in particular, these obligations are heightened when there is a finding of genocide. And I just returned back from the International Court of Justice, where I was part of the Gambia team of the Gambia versus Myanmar genocide case. So we are very clear on some of these obligations and what third-party states can also undertake. So our recommendations are to adopt and apply a presumption of denial for arms transfers and related support to parties in Sudan where there is a clear risk of serious violations and crimes, including rape, sexual enslavement, and other forms of CSV, and to strengthen, to monitor and enforcement against the illicit arm flows into Darfur, and to exercise criminal jurisdiction where it's available. And I hope, Hala, that I'll have an opportunity to talk about submissions that we've made to the International Criminal Court, the jurisdiction that they have, and also how we can use universal jurisdiction in cases we're planning in relation to the crimes that have taken place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Antonia. I would like to welcome our speaker. She just arrived, Dr. Izulu. Thank you very much. She is a member of the independent fact-finding missions on Sudan. One of, in addition to the International Criminal Court, it's it's our only mechanisms that looks at aspects of justice across Sudan. And as civil society, Dr. Joy, we really have hopes and expectations, that the fact-finding missions will provide us with clear guidance into identify modalities for justice that would include the overall Sudan. I'd like to acknowledge also the fact-finding mission's most recent reports that was released a few weeks ago with very strong findings on the atrocities and crimes that has taken place in Darfur. Dr. Joy, if you would like to highlight the gender natures of war crimes and genocidal acts based on your findings, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I haven't been here because I've just practically run out of room 2 where I was presenting in a high-level Friends, under European Union and UN Women, Friends United Against Elimination of Violence, where DSG was speaking, and I just spoke and ran out. I don't know, but I believe that that you did enough setting. People understand what's going on, and people know about our mandate. But just to reiterate, we are independent international fact-finding mission, and we appointed in 2023, December, following the outbreak of war in Sudan, mid-April, and our mandate has been extended by the Human Rights Council, Geneva, and we have a responsibility which includes investigation, to investigate and establish facts, circumstances, and root causes surrounding either violations of international human rights law or international humanitarian law. And again, look at the issue of root causes of conflict in Sudan, preserve evidence, identify those who are responsible, and make recommendations on accountability, including cooperating with other judicial and other mechanisms, and that includes ICC, and we do also cooperate. Our mandate expires September 2026 unless renewed. But recently in November, after the fall of El Fasher, the siege of 18 months, which there was clearly early warning, and the world failed again to act, and just like codified again, and people are saying, what happened? The Human Rights Council mandated us to have a special focus and report on El Fasher, and which was really good because it enabled us to interview a huge number of people, over 300, and our people are still in the field. And just talking about the gender violence, you read our finding, which we call hallmarks of genocide. And then because what we saw and what happens all fall within the spectrum of genocide. And in terms of methodology we use in our work, our mission uses a rigorous methodology in line with the practice of UN and also other investigative body, and consistent with international standard. While we have not had direct access to Sudan, I mean, we've been round to the refugee camps, to neighboring. I was in this January, February, also in South Sudan, and went to all of the settlements and spoke to people. So there are issues around, numbers, questions about number of people, missing, who have been killed, especially, even disappeared, and ensuring access for investigative bodies, including ours, to document and preserve the evidence we need. And the factual information, especially around the issues of sexual and gender-based violence. Survivors, we notice, are in need, urgent need of full spectrum of support services, from immediate medical treatment and psychological care to safe accommodation, legal assistance, and opportunities for economic independence. But the ongoing underfunding, even in fact, while I was in Gorom settlement, we found that some people that have arrived months are not being registered because there is simply, there is no services. UNHCR can't even record them. And we spoke to people, interviewed them rigorously, who, for the first time, are being profiled in that direction as sexual violence survivors, because people are afraid to go there without providing the services that they need. So our main legal, if you look at the actions, what international community should do, especially to stop this, it's not the first time we know that sexual violence is used as a weapon of war. But then mass rape, and in cultures where, the stigma is high, women talking about these things are terrible, and previously even women could obtain abortion and these services in Sudan before the conflict, but the conflict has even complicated matter. And then the fact that some of these are ethnically, motivated, then it then means it's with another vengeance, hatred, slur, racial slurs that goes with it. So Sudan, we've identified patterns and to raise awareness about the brutality and the risk of reoccurrence, and to stop the violation and ensure accountability, humanitarian access, which is very important. So our main legal conclusions, even with the El Fasher, is that we found serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian law committed by RSF in and around El Fasher that amount to international crimes, either war crimes or crimes against humanity. And the same set of facts, again, may amount all of the core international crimes, including war crimes, crime against humanity, and genocide. We found that the pattern of conduct amount to war crimes and crime against humanity, ranging from directly attacking civilians, murder, starvation. Starvation is being used as a weapon of war, to extermination and persecution on gender, ethnic, and political grounds. The same set of facts may also amount to genocide, when the special intent is to destroy in whole or in part. Genocidal intent can be established alongside the existence of a protected group, and in this case, the Zaghawas and the Fourth. The mission found that Zaghawa for Masalit constitute protected groups under Article 6 of the Rome Statute, International Criminal Court. We see the case of Prosecutor Omar al-Bashir arrest warrant. It also established material crimes of genocide have been committed, namely killing members of this group, causing serious bodily or mental harm of members of this group, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about physical destruction in whole or in part. Again, you look at it in relation to genocidal intent. Our report concluded that the only reasonable inference based on the pattern of conduct of rapid support forces is that of genocidal intent. This inference is drawn from evidence as a whole, including the scale and sequence of events, patterns of targeting, language used by commanders and direct perpetrators stating their intention to kill, to eliminate, and to destroy all Zaghawas and the Four, and the cumulative impact of the act on these victims, individually and as a protected group collectively. So we concluded in our findings that this is hallmark of genocide. So for people who can ask what's the difference between genocide and hallmarks of genocide, we call our report hallmarks of genocide because the pattern of conduct shows indicators consistent with genocide. There are various schools of thought who will say that it requires a court to really, pronounce on this, and we have cases, and as lawyers we can argue all of this. So, But it's really, when you look at what I said, you can see why we've said that. So those who accountability must reign. We've held accountability workshop previously. We are sharing information with ICC. When I got into the room, Antonia, you were talking about also other external actors. I want to tell you we are engaging directly with them. We've communicated and we'll follow up, and in our rest report we'll be looking at that. We are looking at war economy as well, at things to also investigate. But it is important that all of you here support implementation of our recommendation. We are not duplicating any process. Government just serve what they do. People just don't want the independence of our mind. We are impartial. We are not political. Our work is based on evidence. So we need to pressure and ensure that the population and the civilian population is protected. This is a war against civilians in Sudan, and we all must continue to demand accountability. It's also a forgotten war. Look at a war where starvation threatening millions, 24. I don't think there is anyone with this humanitarian consequence in the world as we speak than what is going on in Sudan. So thank you so much for organizing this, and thank you for inviting me. And I want to say that all of my colleagues, Muna Rishwana, our chair, Chan Mohammed, they all know I'm here. They actually encourage me and say, represent our fact-finding mission. And I want to send their greetings. And we count on all of your support and the ones you have given. And we will continue to speak out our mind, and we'll continue to raise that accountability stake and preserve the evidence, because that's the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joy, for this powerful intervention, and thank you for summarizing your report. I'm going to invite Nadia again to speak to us. Nadia, briefly, and I'm going to actually invite all of you participants to share very brief interventions before we open the space for questions from the audiences. So Nadia, if you can talk to us about how, the generational sexual violence has been impacting women and communities in Darfur. You have spoken about this crisis for the past literally quarter a century. So yes, over to you.
Thank you so much, Hala, for giving me a chance again. Actually, as I started from the beginning, the war history started since 2003. And generation after generation, I've been, I one of the generation who lost my mother during the war of 23. And actually, still people who are lived in Al-Fashir camp since 2003. Since 2003. It's 23 years. Some people, they move from camp to camp. You go to this camp, you will have another attack, you move to another camp. 23 years we've been conflict after conflict. There is no solution. We have 3 peace deal. We have Abeshe, we have Abuja, Abuja peace deal. We came and we had Doha peace deal, and then again we had Juba peace deal. And all these peace deal, we have not the civilian and IDPs from Darfur. They're still going over and over from the same violence. We've seen camps are being attacked, civilians are being killed around the camps, and now most of the North Darfur camps, they started moving to the west. Some of them, they arrived to Chad, and now Chad, we have 10 refugees camps, but now in the north of the Chad, they're adding population of more North Darfur people are going to Chad. So we still didn't survive any of those wars until we keep adding new generation to this new war. People, new kids are being born this 2026. The mothers are survived the war. Right now, we've been in Sudan Action Hub, we're working on missing people, like people who have missed their kids, they don't find them during Al-Fashir, missing mothers, and a lot of girls are being taken from Al-Fashir to Niyala. We don't know what happened to them, missing girls. And some of you might seen Gisma. She was a young Zaghawa girl being hung in the trees after she being raped. and her pictures is taken by perpetrators, and they are showing in all social media. Al-Fashir, in last October, there is no reporters. The only people who reporting the violence, the Janjaweed by themselves, showing video of how they kill people in Al-Fashir. One of the Al-Fashir, we call them Fashir butcherer. His name is Abu Lulu. He said, today I killed 2,000, but tomorrow I'll start from zero. And this is in TikTok. The video is all over. And people are laughing, said, yes, yes, this is how this 2025 was to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, lack of justice is reflected towards women in so many layers. Lack of service, lack of support for Sudanese women and girls, lack of access to sexual and reproductive health services, the high prevalence, of sexual transmitted diseases, HIV and AIDS. Women from Sudan and from Darfur are dying of hepatitis. They are dying of all forms of sexual transmitted diseases, in addition to hunger and other forms of abandonment. And that speaks to the lack of interest by the international community in actually supporting the civilians who were caught up in this war that is not their war, And so now Sudan is a playground for regional actors, and the conversations about rights, about justice, and about human rights is greatly diminishing. So my questions to you, Macarena, is a key component of accountability is the documentations and the credible voices who speaks about the violation that is happening to civilians, particularly happening to women and girls. So if you can talk to us about the role that Human Rights Watch is playing.
Thank you. Human Rights Watch has been documenting what's going on in Sudan, and particularly in Darfur, for decades. Yeah. And I think that every organization that has the possibility of doing this has to do it, because then you have to look at those reports and look at those documentations as a storyline. It is sort of like an unfortunate book made of chapters that then you can read them all together and see the systematic attacks. You can see the widespread situation. And so I think it's a very important tool at the end of the day. If you systematically continue doing this, despite the fact that people say, well, but nothing happens, why are you doing it? And there is a responsibility to continue doing it, because justice will come eventually. Sure. And accountability will come, and reparations will come. And we have an obligation to also imagine what that means. And I think that we also evolved. And so when we think about what does it mean to document in a survivor-centered way, it's very different today than, say, 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And even today, lots of people want to document for the sake of documenting. Mm-hmm. And what does it mean to have the survivors at the center of this documentation? How do we ensure that there is no re-traumatization? How do we ensure, and it's not easy, it's easy to say it, but it's not easy to say, well, I have a graded objective, which is to document all these atrocities. But your greatest objective has to be to ensure that every survivor is respected in her dignity, in their dignity. And that sometimes can be contradicting. You know, you can't be chasing people to tell their stories. You can't do it in a way that you don't have anything to offer in terms of services. Sure. You know, we can't keep repeating that story. And I think that is something for all of us to continue as we move forward with documentation. How do we do better? How do we really serve the people that should be the beneficiaries of our work at the end of the day? The last thing that I'm going to say is that, Nadia, you said something very, very powerful. You talk about women prisoners who are being tortured. And I think that one of the risks with sexual violence is the essentialization of women. As women get raped, and that's a horrible story with no doubt about it, but it's a very complex story. And it's a complex story of torture and of political activism. And it's a story that sometimes can hide other really difficult components of the stories of the women who survive horrific acts of sexual violence. Sexual violence is more than the sexual violence itself. it has to do also with the stigma. Why girls have to hide after they have been raped because of fear that their relatives may kill them because they stayed with the captors. Why do women have fear of telling their story because of the stigma? Can we talk about that? Can we say, well, can we do something about that? Health services is more than, a pregnant woman is not a mother. We have to stop thinking that a pregnant woman needs to be treated as a mother and that abortion services are a different thing. Abortion services is a discussion for a different panel. It is the discussion of this panel. How do we make sure that there are safe abortion services for women who survive sexual violence? It's not just about, which of course, it's, when I say just in English sounds like I'm diminishing it, so in Spanish it would be different, but it's not solely on sexual violence and the primary health, emergency health care that they need. It is about the long-term livelihoods. It's what you talked about, lack of employment, lack of land rights, lack of access to land. It is a holistic idea. We need to start documenting gendered harms in conflict in a holistic way.
Thank you very much, and I think that's really a very critical and important point, you know, in the work of justice and human rights around, you know, gender and violence. And you are absolutely right about women prisoners. There is thousands of women who are detained and held, you know, in Darfur that we don't have information about them. And unfortunately, communities, they negotiate and they pay ransoms for men, but we rarely hear that ransom is being paid, you know, to release women who were captured. And that's a real crisis, you know, that women were held for, you know, for very, very long time, and often they die without information about them. Antonia, I would like to get back to you, and I understand law has, you know, a very successful records and serious work on pursuing, you know, different passages towards justice and accountability, and also your engagement with the International Criminal Court. So if you can highlight your work and the potentials work that you are looking into in terms of litigations around Sudan.
Thank you very much. For those of you who don't know us, we're a frontline women-led organization working in crisis and conflicts around the world, Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe, and we represent thousands of individuals before national, regional, and international courts. Now, even in these difficult times, in 2025, we had 100 favorable decisions on some of the most complex conflicts in the world in national, regional, and international courts. So we can have successes if we work together, and if we work with the victims and survivors. And the starting point, of course, is what kind of justice do you want, and how can we help you to obtain it? Because different individuals and communities want different things. We're very proud of our partnership with SIHA, and together last year we filed a submission to the International Criminal Court on behalf of 22 Sudanese women, where we've argued war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide have taken place. This is in relation to crimes in 2023. We've already been contacted by the ICC, and they are moving forward. So we know the ICC is in a difficult situation, but we still need to continue to support those who are working there, and also make sure that they hear survivors' voices. Secondly, as you have heard, or I think we heard, but the ICC only has jurisdiction on Darfur. Yeah. But we know that crimes have taken place in other parts of Sudan, Khartoum, Kordofan, Jazeera. So if we're going to be looking strategically at impeding, stopping, or accountability for those who've perpetrated these crimes, we need to look at other options. And in line with that, we will be filing a criminal complaint next month on behalf of survivors. Watch this space when it goes public. These are important cases. We filed cases in other jurisdictions using principles of universal jurisdiction. And just to give you an example, we represented Rohingya survivors who traveled to Argentina It's got nothing to do with the situation of Myanmar, but using pure universal jurisdiction. 6 survivors, all women, gave evidence of sexual violence crimes that they suffered in Myanmar, coupled with UN evidence as well. 25 arrest warrants have been issued against senior Myanmar officials, and they now hope that we will be transferred to Interpol. So I think we can see when you can work with, when member states can stand up, when UN meticulously collects evidence, and when frontline organisations work with victims and survivors, we can go part of the way to assisting them to find justice in its different forms and accountability for those who are responsible. And maybe just one final comment. It does not come without risk. I think we're all aware of that. Risk for the victims, for the witnesses. Extra care has to be taken in relation to this. We unfortunately have a lot of experience in this matter, including representing witnesses who have had to move afterwards. And this is a very important aspect of it. And their consent, how they have, because consent changes over time. People's circumstances change over time, and we need to be very alive to that fact. What options may be available now may not be, they may not want to do in the future, and vice versa. So we have to keep looking at these different opportunities. Again, I'm going to take this opportunity. Let's look at the arms trade and transfer. It's absolutely critical for critical in an unfortunate way for the crimes that are taking place.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Antonia. Dr. Joy, you know, as a network and an organization that emphasize, you know, the crimes of conflict-related sexual violence and other forms of violence that's specifically inflicted on women and girls, and working on a very polarized society and you know, a militarized society, you know, we rely significantly on the work of the fact-finding missions, as you understood clearly, and you said it clearly, that gender-based violence and conflict-related sexual violence are central in this war, and that women bodies, you know, are used as tools in this war beyond being a war strategy. So what's the role, you know, of the fact-finding missions on highlighting that fact, you know, that the violence that's inflicted against women is one of the central acts of violence, you know, and what would be your expectations from the civil society?
Yeah. Thank you so much. You know, of course, our mission has a mandate that covers the whole of Sudan. So we are also focusing in areas outside of Darfur, as the fighting has also expanded to Kordofan. And just like you also say, when you're talking of accountability, that the mandate of ICC does not extend to the whole of Sudan. Yeah. And then we have also other high regions of risk we've documented even before El Fasher. And we've also noted in our previous report that our mission will also examine involvement of third parties, you know, and we're doing so. And our mission will continue to work on its mandate regarding accountability measures, root causes, and in particular, focusing on sexual violence. You will notice that from inception, from our report, and we couldn't have missed it with a person like me or Muna and the work we've done, you know, not to mainstream and make sure this is at the core of, you know, we've brought it out. We've also, like we said, tried to do no harm principle, ethical, but the issues posed here is not, what we've done also is to point out to other relevant agencies on the need for them to begin to give services to these women. And then for organizations that are providing these services, we've been able to do a few links up. We've able to interact with many of them. They've helped us in documentation, in linking us to direct witness accounts, because that's very powerful. And then we still leave it to them. Even at any time, they can withdraw their consent. But, without preservation of those evidence, and even though we're not fully staffed, our secretariat is in Nairobi, with the funding cut at the UN, we also suffered that. But we managed also to get some expertise, military, everything, and what we need. And, UN Women also, London's gender expert, child expert. So we look at all of these issues. So we will continue to do our documentation, and we will continue to pressure that the funding, available funding, to support the wide range of services that women's victims of, because sometimes I find it difficult to really call them survivors when they have not actually survived their victimization, and we have to take note of that. And, to see how do they get services. Previously, some of them they could get these services, but it's no longer possible. And people that have been disappeared, pregnant, that have to go this alone, the gender impact of the conflict is so much, and that it cannot be ignored. And it's not like this before. There have been cycles of conflict in Sudan, but you can tell this is different.
Yes, absolutely.
It is different. And with the sexual violence, it's different. It's done with impunity, it's done with extermination, it's done with every intent not known before. So it is atrocious. And that's why even we are calling for further investigation, of this of this matter. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the great speakers for such valuable and spot-on interventions. And I believe there will be lots of questions and comments. So I'm going to ask you to be very, very brief so that you allow others to engage as well and ask the questions, and then we give our speakers the opportunity to respond. So.
Thank you so much for discussing this heavy topic that unfortunately while we're speaking there is a lot of things going in Sudan still, and we know how it's deprioritized, and thank you so much for bringing it into the top of priority. But I want to mention that people who are working in documenting those kind of things is not easy work, because I'm Sudanese and I engage with a lot of talks on Twitter, on X platforms, and I can see the amount of denial that it's coming from the Sudanese communities in delegitimize this kind of things and how they want to deprioritizing what's going on the bodies of the women. And when it comes to things like peace platforms that suggested by Trump, or like how other peace agreements are being pushed, it's also delegitimizing what women are doing in the floor. So I just want to strengthen in some points that I wrote during the talk, is that strengthening strategies for prosecuting sexual and reproductive violence as genocide requires several shifts. First, we must center survivor experience and ensure that legal framework are capable of capturing the full scope of harm caused by reproductive and sexual violence. It's not collateral damage sites. It's things that have been structurally used as a weapon in order to convey a lot of messages, and we have to put more emphasis on that. Second, we must invest in documentation and evidence collection that reflect a specific gender dimension. This is also, I want to thank SIHA in this kind of work, because earlier I mentioned that there is capturing for the war in Sudan, but it's not gender focused. War is not affecting all the people alike, and we have to put more emphasis on that. Finally, we must recognize the critical role that women's organization and grassroots network in Darfur have played in documenting violation, supporting survivor and sustaining demands for justice. And we have to provide also mechanisms for funding and resourcing for them, because it's not an easy work and it needs a lot of protection psychologically and financially. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ines. Well done.
I want to ask a really quick question. So my name is Sagal. I'm also part of SIHA delegation. So I work in Somalia and Yemen. One thing I find really interesting in countries where we are trying to transition is that we know justice won't happen overnight. So my question is, what do we do with the memory and the documentation as a form of healing? Because if it takes another 10, 15 years for the political institutions to rebuild and for survivors to get justice, what do we do in the between? Because I think that's one of the most challenging parts, because there is like 2, 3, 4 generations of women who have to live with the memories and also be in the same space where trauma has been inflicted on them. So what do you do in those moments? So yeah.
Thank you very much. We have a 4-minute film that we're going to show towards the end, but we will continue the question and then we'll come back very quickly. I know, Antonio, you have to leave at right now or in a few
minutes.
Okay, in a few minutes. Okay, so I'll get back to you. Yeah.
Macarena, you mentioned that things have changed in terms of, in the last 20, 30 years, of how that protection is offered. I'm not in the field. Could you be more concrete about that? That would be nice.
Yeah. If you can pass the microphone next to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very close, very short. So my question is, what do you think countries which are around, Sudan, could do to improve the situation here? Because I was very close to Sudan like a few months ago, and I suddenly realized what do we have to do if we are living here to try to avoid what is happening over there. So what do you think that these countries how could they help these people to improve the situation if possible?
Thank you. No question? Okay. So because Antonia has to leave, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to respond.
Thank you very much. In relation to your question, it's a very good point. I mean, we describe justice, it's a journey. And we may never get to court. People may not want to go to court. But the most important thing, and it's as you said as well, we see this. Many people do not move from being victims to survivors. Many people are killed. So we need to be really clear about this. And when we do go to court, for example, though, it's taken years and years of work with individuals to get to that point. But what I'm saying is that if we treat it as a journey, and you're empowering individuals to reclaim their dignity, to find also to work on what is it that they want for themselves or for their families. It might be a memorial within their community. We've seen that. Maybe they can also work on we call it transformative justice, a justice that will help themselves, their families, communities heal and find a way forward. We often hear from individuals who suffer from sexual violence about reclaiming their dignity as well and shifting that shame away from them. And quite frankly, why should they bear that shame? And the second question, in relation to the neighbouring countries, absolutely, there's a lot that they could be doing. Yeah. Firstly, we know that arms are flowing through the neighbouring countries, Chad, Libya, Kenya, and so on. So we urge them to review what is happening and what measures they can take. Secondly, there's nothing precluding any countries within the region from taking also legal action in relation to these cases, whether it be criminal prosecution or also through regional mechanisms. And also to to have discussions like this taking place within the region. We heard many times African solutions for African problems. Excellent. Let's begin. And we should start, not least within Sudan. Last year, I faced Ethiopia at the court. We filed a case against Ethiopia on behalf of Tigrayan civilians, and we got provisional measures against Ethiopia the first time in 10 years at the African Commission in Banjul. So I hope that gives some ideas.
Dr. Joy, final words? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, yes, I agreed on the conversation with regard to African solution for African problems. We had talk about that with regard to concept of sovereignty and solidarity. And I always say the solidarity should be with the people of Sudan who are suffering, the millions of people of Sudan, not just to mount, African leaders' solidarity. With regard to really the memories, I think we must strive to preserve. And for those affected, never forget. But that doesn't mean you won't reclaim your life through transformative justice. But because forgetting or selective or collective amnesia is why there has not been the accountability and the cycle. It goes to the roots. We're also doing work on root causes of conflict in Sudan. Because then it come up again after a few years again, another cycle of conflict will break out. So these issues, even it's not just Sudan, even for Africa. I believe if they have museum, I saw one like that in Chile, and it was so powerful. It's so powerful when I went up, done there twice, to a reminder, never again are we going to have this type of thing. I think we always forget and we want to destroy everything, erase everything.
Especially the
and then
sexual,
try to distort, especially the sexual violence.
Yeah.
So hush down, and nobody talks about it. It appears like if you talk about it, something is wrong with this person. Nobody believes you. It looks like you're just making it up. We need to preserve so that when those that are perpetrating it should be the ones ashamed. And that gender will say, no, we won't do this again. If you're part of us and you do this, then this is the punishment you get, Is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Macarena, final word?
I would like for you to have the final word, but
go ahead. I will give Nadia the opportunity.
So just to your question, I think that international law, just like national laws, have started also as very patriarchal and sort of like representing ideas of the people who were drafting, which were mostly males. So, okay, what is rape? Oh, it's a crime against the honor, rather than a crime against integrity. Just as in many countries, rape was a crime that was against the honor of the family, a crime against the father, a crime that brings shame. It's not really a crime. It's sort of like stigma, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that international has also evolved in the same way. And so thanks to the International Tribunal for the Rwanda in 1998, it was when really rape became a possible act of genocide. It was in 1993 that the International Tribunal for Yugoslavia said, well, rape is a crime against humanity. So that is a shift in the mentality. So how do we move from there to women having agency to decide what is reparations also? Justice continues to be very male-oriented. It's like, somebody has to go to jail. Well, how about we stop raping people? How do you do to stop the rape rather than everybody should go to prison? And so how do we do that? That requires a shift in the cultural idea of patriarchy, in what it brings shame. When we talk about the decriminalization, the social decriminalization of abortion, and we say, people have to talk about their experiences in the kitchen table, is the same thing. People need to talk about the shameful experience for the people, the perpetrators. They are the ones with shame, not the victims, not the survivors. But yet we still sort of like, we know, how do we, this is something that we don't talk about what happens to us, to women, on a daily basis. So I think that international law is shifting in the same way that local laws are shifting, and they are shifting because of everyone here, because of the conversations that we're having in our own families, in our own units.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us here all this time. I would like to talk a lot about what's happening in Sudan, but one thing I would like you and everyone who attended this, there's a lot going on, especially in Darfur, especially the women who survived there. And as you guys know, USAID being closed is one of the major funding for all grassroots organizations. Please fund, please help all the organizations who are working in the field to make, in order for them to make their reporting and documentation of what going on in Sudan, especially women grassroots organization. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Nadia. Would like to bring the voices of some of the women. So can we go ahead and just listen in, please? Yeah.
انتوا اساكر متدربين. قلنا له والله نحن ما نساكر. قال لنا مرقنا في افتتاح اللشاء، لقينا 2 قاعد يسووا رفرين نادونا نحن 4. واحد فوقهم سألانا انتوا أساكر متدربين؟ قلنا له والله نحن ما نساكر. قال لنا انتباه، خلف دور. قلنا ما نعرف نحن ما أساكر. واحد فوقهم حمل سلاح بينه وخد السكين فوقي. قال لي يا إرسال اقتلوكم كلكم. مسكوه قتيل كبير وموسى أخوهم بعيد وخلونا أنا وأختي الصغيرة مع التاني. التاني بقى يسألنا انتوا أساكر؟ قلنا له لا ما أساكر. بعد بقى أختي الصغيرة وجيت أنا براي، فجأت أنا أقول لهم نحن ما أساكر. بعد اغتصبوني وخلاص. في شعري شالوا تلفوناتنا وقروشنا وملابسنا. ملابس عيال ما خلوا حاجة. كان معانا 7 رجال برضو كلهم جلدوهم. فرقلوا لنا أحلامنا كلهم. عندي كتاب قرآن قاعد قدامي. واحد قال لنا مرة دخلوه الدينار، التاني قال له الدين شنو والإسلام شنو؟ الخلاكم تجوهم شنو؟ عندكم شنو ما تعامل؟ ومباسكم كم دللوا خانونا وبهدلونا. كان قاموا فوق يبونا، كان قعدوا نقولوا. سألونا قال لنا انتوا زغاوة؟ قلنا له لا لا والله نحن ما زغاوة. قعدنا تاني زي الشجرة. فاتوا رجعوا تاني لقونا. حاجاتنا الباقي فرقوا لنا. شالوا تلفوني وقروشي وأدوني كف لحد هسه راكمين بيه فوق وجه. سألوني عندك شنو؟ قلت أنا والله غير أولاد لي 2 ده شغل تاني ما عندي. ديلك فاتوا لقيناهم تاني في طريق. شالوا لنا حاجاتنا فرقلونا دقونا قدامي قتلوا مرة. بنيتي صرخت وآتت. جيرة قال لي أمي خلينا نبدو فاشل. قلت له بنيتي تاني فاشل ولا نقدر نبدو، خلينا نمشي. ليل كله ماشيين ما هنمشي معرفين. عندي حاجات شايلين في قليل تقيل كل شوية مداها مرة ملاعب مرة لبسة. في النهاية لقيت نفسي إلا روحي بتشايل. ومشينا لحد ما وصلنا. الحمد لله ربنا نجانا. نحن ماشيين طلعنا من أمانة. بقى البنات ديل دخلوا ضربونا وقتلوا لنا أخواتنا. في الطلعة 10 بنات و3 رجال. مشينا حل الشيخ ما لقينا حاجة في طريق، مشينا قرني برضو ما لقينا زول، وسيبنا كورما لقيناه نادو بنات. في راجل شايب كده وقفان قال لنا لا لا أنا ممكن أخلي بناتي. طوالي قتلوه قدام ليلو. ليلو قامت بيه يا أبوي أبوي. بعد ذاك نحن طلعونا قالوا للبنات لا رجال. عندي أختي عمري زي 14 سنة كده، قلت لهم خلوه أخاك الآن يمشي برا. قام هدلوني، قلت لهم أخاك الآن يعني خلوه على كبر. قالوا لي إنتي يا أختك يا نغتصبوه يا نشيلوا بنيتك. قلت لهم خلاص اغتصبوني، لكن خلوا بنيتي واغتصبوني.
العيانين كانوا كتار في المستشفى السعودي بياخذوا العلاجات أكثر من 200. في محل النساء والتوليد كان في أكثر من 20 مرة حامل، والثانيات برضه عندهم نزيف. كمان في شفاء صغار عندهم ظروف نزيف برضه قتلوهم. الدكاترة الفطريات في المستشفى برضه قتلوهم كلهم. مرقنا يوم الأحد من المستشفى مع الشباب، لما وصلنا قرني شمال الفاشر شباب كلهم ساقوهم في جرارات وساقوهم لحتة ما معروفة. النسوان والشياب الكبار والعيال الصغار كلهم برضه ساقوهم، لكن ما عارف ليه. كان عندنا عيانين عندهم عمليات خليناهم هناك، هسي ما معروف الحاصل لهم شيء، لكن أنا متأكد إنه يكون صفوهم.
Well, those are some of the testimonies for communities who were forced to flee al-Fashir. If you would like to learn more about what's happening in Sudan and what's happening in Darfur, please go to our website, SIHAnet.org. We keep producing reports, press statements, testimonies. We try as much as we can to bring the voices of the victims and survivors to the front. And please continue to amplify our voices and get in touch at any point with us if you need information. Thank you so much for being with us. And we really appreciate your participation and you joining us. Thanks.